Imagine finding a hidden door, right? Like in the house you've lived in your entire life.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it leads to this subterranean room. And you find blueprints down there that just completely contradict the foundation you're currently standing on.
That is a wild image, but yeah, very fitting.
Today, for you listening, we are opening a door exactly like that. But the house we're talking about is one of the most famous historical figures of all time. We are taking a figure you likely think you know inside and out, and we are exploring a radically different set of blueprints.
Completely different.
Right. So we're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating document. It was curated and translated back on December 12, 2011 by someone named Shuofeng. And what Shuofeng presents here is a collection of 113 secret discourses of Jesus recorded during his lifetime by Thomas.
Yeah, and the context our curator provides here, it completely shifts the lens on how we're supposed to read this material.
It really does.
Shuofeng states right from the beginning that these specific teachings, they were not included in the traditional Bible.
Right, they were left out.
Exactly. But relying purely on intuition, Shuofeng claims absolute certainty that these are genuinely the words of Jesus, just offered up for everyone to analyze. It's an invitation to engage with a text that feels hidden, almost subversive, really.
Yeah, it has this very mysterious vibe to it.
Totally. Actually, just looking around my backdrop today, I've swapped out the usual scenery for something that feels appropriate for the material. I went with this dimly lit, ancient library look, dust motes floating in the air, with scattered esoteric manuscripts just unrolled on the table.
Oh, I love that. It fits perfectly.
Right, because that is exactly the atmospheric energy of this text. It requires deep, quiet excavation. You can't just skim it.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because if you go into this text expecting a simple list of straightforward moral rules.
Oh, you will be disappointed.
Completely. If you want the standard, do this, don't do that, be a good neighbor kind of framework, you are going to be thrown completely off balance. What we have here instead is this intense collection of riddles, paradoxes, and deep mystical insights.
Yeah, it's not a rule book at all.
No, not at all. It's Jesus functioning not as a moral lawgiver dispensing community guidelines, but as this disruptive, mystical guide.
The hacker almost.
Yes, a hacker. And to truly grasp the architecture of this document, we have to start with the ultimate destination it promises, which is the kingdom of heaven. But the text immediately, and I'd say rather aggressively, redefines where that kingdom actually is.
It completely dismantles our standard geographic understanding right out of the gate.
Right.
The traditional cultural view often places heaven as a distinct physical or temporal destination, like somewhere you go after you die, or a place situated physically above us in the clouds.
Yeah, the pearly gates in the sky.
Exactly. But this text rejects that entirely.
Yeah, right in saying 3, Jesus basically mocks the idea of a physical locational heaven. He says to the seeker, if the rulers tell you, look, the kingdom of heaven is in the sky, well, then the birds of the sky are going to beat you there.
Right.
And if they say the kingdom is in the sea, then the fish will precede you.
It's almost comedic, honestly.
It is. He's pointing out the absolute absurdity of looking outward to institutions or physical spaces, because he follows it up by saying, yet the kingdom is both within and outside of you. And realizing this self-knowledge makes you realize you are a, quote, precious gem.
A precious gem. I love that phrasing.
Me too. It reminds me of frantically tearing your house apart looking for your glasses, only to realize they've been sitting on top of your head the entire time.
Yes.
The truth isn't geographically hidden. Your awareness is just fundamentally misdirected.
It's a profound ontological shift. I mean, it completely changes our foundational definition of what existence actually is.
Right.
He emphasizes in Same 5 that this isn't some secret treasure hunt where the prize is buried under a rock somewhere.
Like Indiana Jones.
Right, exactly. He states, once you recognize what is within you, the hidden truth will become apparent. For the truth has neither been concealed nor revealed. It simply exists. The kingdom isn't a place you travel to, It is a state of being you uncover.
But okay, here's where it gets really interesting. If the kingdom is purely an internal realization, that places a terrifying burden on us, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because if I can't rely on a church or a physical map, a priest, or like a specific set of community rituals to guarantee my salvation, it's entirely on my shoulders. I have to do the work myself. Doesn't that risk leaving the individual completely unmoored?
What's fascinating here is how the text frames the alternative to taking on that exact burden. It's not presented as a casual self-help tip.
Like a lifestyle blog or something.
Right, no, it is an absolute existential imperative. In that same third saying, Jesus warns that if you do not know yourself, you dwell in ignorance, and that ignorance itself will consume you.
Wow. Consume you.
Yeah, it's intense. So, yes, the text places the ultimate authority and responsibility squarely on the individual's internal state. You aren't waiting for an external institution to validate your worth. You are engaged in the incredibly high-stakes, solitary work of recognizing the precious gem of your own existence.
And if you don't?
The mechanism here is stark. If you fail to look inward, you aren't just remaining neutral. You are actively being devoured by the void of your own lack of self-awareness.
Man. So if the kingdom is locked inside us and external authorities are completely useless, then our standard tools for navigating the external world, like basic linear logic, they become completely obsolete.
Right. They don't work anymore.
In fact, they become obstacles, which explains why the text suddenly starts attacking the reader's common sense. It suggests that to access this internal kingdom, you actually have to break your own mind.
You really do. The path of the seeker in these records is definitively not a peaceful meditative stroll.
Not at all.
It is psychologically disruptive by design.
Highly disruptive. Let's look at saying 2. It lays out the exact roadmap for anyone trying to find this truth. Jesus says, let the seeker continue seeking until they find. When they find, they will be troubled. After being troubled, they will marvel, and ultimately they will rule over all.
Yeah, that word troubled is key.
It is. You read that and immediately hit a wall. You find the ultimate truth of the universe, and your first reaction is supposed to be troubled. Why is being troubled the mandatory prerequisite here? Is it because you literally cannot build a new internal worldview until you violently demolish the old external one, like comfort is the enemy of discovery?
That is precisely the mechanism at play. And, you know, this raises an important question about the actual neuropsychology of unlearning.
Oh, interesting.
Think about it. If your entire life, your identity and your sense of security have been built on the illusion of external salvation and material permanence, discovering that everything you thought you knew is an illusion is inherently traumatic.
Yeah, it's world-shattering.
Exactly. Being troubled is the intense discomfort of cognitive dissonance. It's your brain physically resisting the collapse of its deeply held structures.
It hurts.
It does. You are experiencing the pain of the old, false worldview shattering before the new, true one can take root. You have to pass through that disorientation to reach the state of marveling.
And to force that disorientation, the text deploys these incredibly bizarre riddles. Like, saying 4 talks about an elderly man asking a 7-day-old infant about the secret of life's origin to achieve eternal life.
Yeah, which makes zero logical sense.
None. And then you have saying 7, which is a total brain breaker. It says, blessed is the lion that a human eats, for it will become human. Cursed is the human who eats the lion.
That one is so evocative.
It really is. These paradoxes feel like a mental circuit breaker to me, like intentionally introducing a software glitch to force a frozen computer to reboot.
That's a great way to put it. And if we look at the mechanics of the lion metaphor, it illustrates exactly how this reboot is supposed to function.
How so?
Well, in this mystical context, the lion represents wild, worldly consumption, the primal animalistic drives of the material world.
Like hunger, greed, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Base hunger, unchecked ambition, purely physical desires. Now, if a human eats or consumes and masters that worldly nature, the raw energy of the lion is transformed.
Wow.
It is metabolized and elevated by human consciousness, and it becomes blessed. But if the human is consumed by the lion, meaning if the human yields entirely to those worldly animalistic appetites, they are reduced to base matter. They are destroyed or cursed.
Okay, so the goal isn't to kill the lion. It's not to somehow eradicate our worldly drives entirely, but to consume and control them.
Yeah.
We have to digest the material world rather than letting it digest us.
Right.
But doesn't eating the lion imply that we still rely on the material world to some degree to fuel our spiritual journey?
It implies that you cannot ignore the material world while you are in it, but you must fundamentally change your relationship to it.
You can't just pretend it's not there.
Right, but you are no longer its prey. You are its master. And that concept of mastering the material world bridges directly into what is arguably the most uncompromising part of this text.
Yeah, because metabolizing the world requires seeing it for what it truly is. And the text views human existence and the material world in an incredibly harsh light.
Very harsh.
In saying 15, Jesus explicitly states that people think he came to bring peace to the earth, But they are entirely wrong. He says, I have brought conflict, fire, swords, and wars. He describes actively dividing households, 3 against 2.
It's very militant language.
It is. And then in sayings 55 and 79, he states that anyone who truly begins to understand this world will, quote, only find a corpse.
Corpse, yeah.
Calling the entirety of the physical world a corpse borders on absolute nihilism.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? How does a spiritual guide justify such a grim, depressing outlook to a listener who is just trying to find enlightenment?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of the text's philosophy, it isn't actually nihilism. No, because nihilism suggests there is no meaning anywhere. This text insists there is supreme meaning, but it is purely internal. Calling the world a corpse is an extreme, urgent warning against the sunk cost fallacy of materialism.
The sunk cost fallacy. Yeah.
Yeah, a corpse, by definition here, is something that is entirely devoid of the living spirit. It is something that is actively decaying. If you invest your life force, your identity, and your spiritual energy into things that are inherently decaying, like wealth, social status, physical monuments.
You're tying yourself to a corpse.
Exactly. You're tying yourself to a corpse. The text isn't saying the world is maliciously evil. It is saying the world is spiritually dead compared to the living reality inside you.
So it's about recognizing that trying to extract permanent spiritual life from temporary material things is just a mathematical impossibility.
Exactly. And the text provides brilliant, tragic metaphors to illustrate this exact mechanism of wasted energy.
Yeah, like saying 62.
Yes. Look at saying 62. There is a wealthy man who plans to use all his money to sow, reap, and fill his barns so he will never want for anything.
Classic retirement plan.
Right. He makes this grand, logical plan for his material future, and that exact night, he dies. The barns are completely useless to his actual self.
Wow.
Or look at saying 96. A woman is walking a long way home carrying a jar full of meal. Unbeknownst to her, the handle breaks and the meal slowly spills out on the road behind her the entire way.
Yeah.
She doesn't notice until she gets home, sets the jar down, and finds it completely empty.
You know, the image of the woman with the leaking jar is deeply unsettling to me because it is so mundane.
It really is.
The rich man building barns is this dramatic story of hubris, but the woman is just walking home. It makes you think about how we operate today, like chasing a promotion, constantly refreshing our social feeds, maintaining external appearances.
This is daily life.
Right. You are walking the long road of life, thinking you're carrying all this substance. But because your attention is tied to the material world, because the vessel is flawed, your vital energy is just draining away without you even noticing.
Exactly.
And when you reach the end, you have absolutely nothing to show for it.
That is the exact danger the text is trying to jolt the reader out of. You spend your entire life carrying an empty jar because you thought the jar itself was the valuable part.
Right.
This is why, in saying 41, Jesus offers the ultimate piece of survival advice for navigating this corpse of a world. He says, become a passing traveler.
Become a passing traveler. I mean, the immediate analogy is how you treat a hotel room, right?
Yeah, perfect analogy.
You sleep in the bed, you use the space, but you know you're checking out tomorrow. So you don't spend your life savings remodeling the bathroom.
You don't put down new tile in a Marriott.
Exactly. But practically speaking, living as a passing traveler in modern society seems nearly impossible. We are biologically wired to set down roots, to build communities, to accumulate resources for winter. The text is asking us to act against our very nature.
It is asking you to act against your biological, material nature in order to save your spiritual nature. Being a passing traveler doesn't mean you don't interact with the world. It means you traverse it without being anchored to it.
You stay detached.
Yes. You don't let your identity become contingent on the hotel room.
Yeah.
And to drive home this radical individualism, this absolute detachment, the text does something rhetorically brilliant.
What's that?
It borrows parables that the listener probably thinks they already know inside and out, but it twists the underlying logic to completely alter the moral of the story.
Oh yeah, it creates this uncanny valley effect for Scripture. It looks like a story you've heard 1,000 times, but the deeper you look, the more alien and subversive the underlying message becomes.
It really does.
Let's look at the parable of the lost sheep in saying 106. Most people know the traditional version. A shepherd has 100 sheep, one goes astray, he leaves the 99, searches for the lost one, and brings it back.
The standard comforting Sunday school story.
Right. The comforting takeaway is about universal rescue, that every single person is cared for no matter how lost they are. But the twist here completely subverts the traditional comfort of the story.
It fundamentally changes the criteria for why the sheep is valued.
Right. The text specifically notes that the sheep that wanders off isn't just any sheep. It's the largest one.
The larger than order.
And when the shepherd finally finds it, after enduring the hardship of the search, he doesn't just welcome it back into the safety of the herd. He explicitly tells the lost sheep, "I love you more than the 99."
Shocking, really.
It completely upends the idea that the flock is the goal, the flock is complacent. Does the shepherd love the lost sheep more simply because it had the audacity to wander away from the safety of the collective?
Yes. To synthesize this, we have to connect it back to the text's ultimate core value, which is the elevation of the solitary seeker.
The solitary seeker.
The text repeatedly emphasizes the absolute necessity of breaking away from the crowd. In saying 74, Jesus remarks, "Many stand at the door, but only the solitary will enter the bridal chamber."
Wow.
And in saying 48, he says, "Blessed are the lonely and chosen ones, for you will find the kingdom of heaven." The 99 sheep are safe, but their safety is a form of spiritual stagnation. They aren't seeking. They aren't undergoing the troubling journey of unlearning that we discussed earlier.
So wandering isn't a mistake in this version. Wandering is an act of spiritual rebellion.
Exactly. The lost sheep is prized exactly because it's separated from the mindless herd. It took the difficult path, left the comfort of the collective, and ventured out into the unknown. Therefore, it is loved more.
That is wild.
The text is demanding that the reader become that solitary seeker. It's telling you that you cannot find the internal kingdom while you are safely huddled in the middle of the flock, relying on the collective to define your reality.
That reframes the entire concept of faith in this document. It's not about being rescued because you are weak. It's about being prized because you were brave enough to break away and seek, even if it meant being entirely alone.
Right.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This text doesn't want followers. It wants independent explorers.
It demands an incredible, almost overwhelming amount of personal responsibility. You are the sole architect of your own spiritual reality. The guide can point to the door, but only the solitary seeker can walk through it.
Okay, let's take a breath and zoom out, speaking directly to you, our listener. We've journeyed deep into Suifeng's curation of Thomas's records today.
It's been quite the journey.
It has. And what we've uncovered is a version of a famous historical figure operating as a disruptive mystical hacker. We've seen that the kingdom of heaven isn't a location in the sky. It's a hidden ontological reality within yourself.
Yeah.
But accessing it means you have to be willing to be troubled. You have to intentionally glitch your conventional logic, detach your identity from the material world, recognizing it as a decaying system, and learn the incredibly difficult practice of walking through your daily life as a passing traveler.
Our passing traveler.
And above all, it means having the courage to leave the comfort of the 99, to be the solitary seeker who ventures out alone.
It is a rigorous, deeply demanding path, but it is one that promises the ultimate realization of the self. And, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, truly mind-bending quote from the source material that acts as the ultimate culmination of this entire process.
I love it.
It's from saying 21.
The ultimate glitch in the software. Let's hear it.
Jesus is asked how to enter the kingdom, and he replies, "When you make the two into one and make the inner like the outer and the outer, like the inner and the upper like the lower, when you make the male and female into one so that the male is no longer male and the female is no longer female, when you replace eyes with a single eye, then you will enter the kingdom."
Wow. When you make two into one, it's the total collapse of all categories.
It is. So I want to challenge you to mull this over as you go about the rest of your day. We spend our entire lives categorizing our reality to make sense of it. Good and bad, rich and poor, inner and outer, us and them.
We have labels for everything.
We do. So what would it actually look like in your own life to completely collapse every duality? What would happen if you stopped dividing the world into opposing forces and instead collapsed all of those labels into pure, undivided unity?
It brings us right back to that hidden room we talked about at the very beginning. You think you know the structure of the house you live in. You think there's an upstairs and a downstairs, an inside and an outside.
Right.
But then you look at the true blueprints and you realize the walls themselves were always an illusion. The real kingdom was never the structure of the house at all. It was the undivided, infinite space within you, just waiting for you to realize it was there.